Hello, my name is Dr. Matute, University of Arkansas, PTC. This is a brief overview of the human heart and illustrative account. So this is a model here of the human heart. This is another one right here. So the human heart is located within the thoracic cavity. Inside the thoracic cavity, we have the pericardial cavity that surrounds the heart. The human heart is also surrounded by the lungs. Surrounded by the lungs. The human heart is about the size of your fist, and it can be called a powerhouse. Now, in anatomical position, the the apex of the human heart is tilted more towards the left side of your body. Now, in terms of functions, the human heart has three main functions. Number one, um, uh, it it contracts slash pumps blood throughout the body. So it contracts. When it contracts, it pumps blood throughout the body via the circulatory system. That's one function. Another function is it um, it distributes oxygen and nutrients throughout the body. A third function is it removes carbon dioxide and other waste from the tissues of the body so that they do not end up poisoning those tissues. Now, very quickly, let's look at some aspect of the external anatomy of the heart. So here we go. Over here we have the great vessels. We'll talk about that in a little bit. This is an atrium right here. So this is the right atrium. This is the left atrium. This is the right ventricle over here. Left ventricle over here. This is the apex. You can see that the apex is curved more towards the left. Then over here, this is a cardiac vein, the bluish one, that's the cardiac vein. And then over here, the reddish one right here, this will be a coronary artery. If we use this other model over here, we're going to see the same thing. These are the great vessels right here. This is the right atrium, this is the left atrium, right ventricle, left ventricle. This is the apex here, curved a little bit to the left. And then here, this is a coronary artery, and this will be a coronary vein or cardiac vein. Coronary vein or cardiac vein. Now, the great vessels, here are the great vessels. Here are the great vessels. Why are they called the great vessels? Number one, they are the largest vessels in the human body. Number two, they are directly connected to the heart. Number three, they directly supply blood to the heart and they directly take blood away from the heart. Why are they called the great vessels? They are the largest vessels in the body. They are directly connected to the heart. They directly supply blood to the heart and they directly take blood away from the heart. So how many great vessels are there? So let's see if we can actually identify the main great vessels. We'll use this model right here. So we'll start with the superior vena cava. This is the superior vena cava, and over here this is the inferior vena cava. Superior vena cava, inferior vena cava. Then over here, this is the aorta or the aortic arch. Aorta or aortic arch. And here, this is the descending aorta. Descending aorta. So we have the aorta right here, or the aortic arch, and then we have the descending aorta right here. Then we have the pulmonary arteries and the pulmonary veins. So over here, this is the pulmonary arteries. This is the pulmonary artery right here. And on this model, let's see here, on this model, this will be a pulmonary vein right here. So pulmonary artery, pulmonary vein for here. So one more time, we have a total of 6 great vessels. We have the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava. Let's see if we can see them using this model right here. This will be the this is the superior vena cava right here, and this is the inferior vena cava. Over here, this is the aorta or the aortic arch, and this is the descending aorta right here. This is the pulmonary vein right here, and I'm trying to see, and then this will be the pulmonary artery right here. Good. Now, let's go on to, so we are done with the external anatomy of the heart. Let's go inside the heart to see what it looks like in there. The heart has 4 chambers. The heart has 4 chambers. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can see that. 1, 2, 3, 4. The upper chambers or the superior chambers, they are called the atria. So this is the left atrium and this is the right atrium. Over here, left ventricle, right ventricle. Right ventricle, left ventricle. Right atrium, left atrium. So these are the 4 chambers of the heart. Now, if you look at this other model, we'll see the same thing. Open that, open this. Open this. So here we are. This is the right atrium. This is the left atrium. This is the right ventricle. This is the left ventricle. Now, what is the function of the right ventricle? Oxygen-poor blood enters the heart via the right ventricle. Oxygen-poor blood enters the heart via the right ventricle. What is the function of the right? Sorry, this is the atrium. This is the atrium. Oxygen-poor blood enters the heart via the right atrium. And oxygen-poor blood exits the heart via the right ventricle. So when blood is received, when oxygen-poor blood is received here in the right atrium, that blood is transferred down to the right ventricle, and the right ventricle pumps it out of the heart. On this other side, this is the left atrium. Oxygen-rich blood enters the heart via the left atrium. Then that blood will be transferred down to the left ventricle, and then the left ventricle will pump that blood out of the heart to the general circulation. Out of the heart to general circulation. So let's use this other model right here. Here we go. We have the, this is the right atrium. It receives oxygen-poor blood. It transfers it down to the right ventricle, and then the right ventricle will pump this blood out of the heart to the lungs for oxygenation. Here, this is the left atrium. It receives oxygen-rich blood into the heart. It sends it down to the left ventricle, and this left ventricle pumps it out of the heart into the general circulation. We have valves. We have valves. We have two sets of valves. We have two sets of valves. You can see them here. This is one set of the valve. And let's see here. And okay, I don't know if you can see this. So we have two sets of valves. Let's look at this one first. These ones here, which we see, they are between the atrium and the ventricle. These are called the AV valves. The AV valves. AV stands for atrioventricular. Atrioventricular. Now, the general functions of valves is that they control blood flow and they prevent backflow of blood. So these are the atrioventricular valves. They control flow of blood from the atrium to the ventricle, and when they open, blood leaves the atrium to the ventricle. Once that blood has been transferred to the ventricle, they will close to prevent that blood from going back to the atrium that they actually came from. So they are called atrioventricular, from the atrium to the ventricles. Then we have a second set of valves. You can see them right here. I hope that can be seen. You can see them over here. They are called the semilunar valves. The semilunar valves. Called the semilunar valves. The semilunar valves, when they open, blood is pumped out of the heart. When they close, the blood that has been pumped out of the heart will be prevented from coming back into the heart. The semilunar valves, here they are. When they open, they allow blood to be pumped out of the heart. And once that the blood has been pumped out of the heart, they will close to prevent the blood from coming back into the heart. There are two semilunar valves. We have the aortic semilunar valve and the pulmonary semilunar valve. The aortic semilunar valve is actually found at the base of the aorta, while the pulmonary semilunar valve is found at the base of the pulmonary arteries. Now, this structure here is called the septum. Septum. This is septum over here. The septum divides the heart into left half and right half. So this is the right half of the heart, and that's the left half of the heart. And the right side of the heart carries oxygen-poor blood. This left side carries oxygen-rich blood. So the septum is there to ensure that oxygen-rich blood and oxygen-poor blood do not mix. Next, if you look at, these are the walls of the atrium and the walls of the ventricles. So if you compare their thickness right here, these walls are very thin as compared to these walls right here. So in other words, the ventricular walls are thicker than the atrial walls. Atrial walls are thin, ventricular walls are thick. Why is that? The atrial walls, when they contract, they'll pump blood from here to here. So they simply transport blood from one part of the heart to another, short distance. But the ventricular walls, they pump blood out of the heart, long distance. Because they pump blood out of the heart, they need more force. And that more force comes with thicker walls. The thicker the walls, the better the force, or the greater the force that will ensure that they're able to pump the blood out of the heart. Then, if you look at this carefully, if you look at the ventricular walls of the right ventricle and the left ventricle, there is a difference. Hopefully you can tell the difference. Look at the walls. So you can see that the walls, the ventricular walls of the left atrium, they are thicker than the walls of the right atrium. Why is it that these walls here are thicker than these walls right over here? Because remember, this is the left ventricle. It pumps blood into the general circulation. Pumps blood in the general circulation. So you need more force. Over here, these walls here, this is the right atrium. It pumps blood to the lungs. The lungs are pretty close to the heart, so it's not a long distance. So they do not need that much force as compared to this chamber here that pumps blood to the rest of the body. Next, we want to look at the wall layers. So if you look at this wall here, it has 3 layers. Layer number 1, layer number 2, and layer number 3. Layer number 1, layer number 2, and layer number 3. This outermost layer is called the epicardium. The epicardium is protective. It is made up of connective tissues, fibers, and adipose tissue. This middle layer here, which is brownish, this is the myocardium. The myocardium is made up of cardiac muscles, and it forms the bulk of the heart. This is the pumping section of the heart. If it contracts, then the heart pumps blood. Then in here, lining these chambers is the endocardium. The endocardium, it lines the inner chambers of the heart and the valves. So that's a summary of the structure of the heart and how it actually functions. This model here shows us heart bypasses. So normally the blood that the heart circulates all over the body, the heart does not use that blood. The heart has its own circulatory system called the coronary circulation. Sometimes the heart may not have enough oxygen-rich blood to keep it working. So if that happens, to prevent the heart cells from dying, then blood will be tapped from the aorta back to the heart. Blood will be tapped from the aorta back to the heart. So blood will be taken from the aorta, and then it will be connected to the arteries of the heart. It's going to be from artery to arteries. So when blood is tapped from the aorta back to the heart, that will be called a bypass. That will be called a bypass. A double bypass is if you have 2 of these ones. If you have 3 of these ones, it will be called a triple bypass. If you have 4 of these ones, it will be called a quadruple bypass.